Hi everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Phil and I'm a senior lecturer in astrophysics at the University of Lincoln. And in this video I want to actually look at an interesting process where we can actually extract energy from a black hole. It's called the Penrose Process. Now I'm going to assume that if you've made it to this video that you've got a basic idea and understanding of black holes. If not, maybe you can let me know in the comments and I can maybe make a separate video on maybe the different types of black hole or what a black hole actually is. But for this video, I'm going to assume that you kind of know the most basic stuff about black holes and move on to kind of like the ergosphere really, and a couple of types of black hole because it only relates to one specific type really. So just to kind of recap then very briefly, what is a black hole? Well, if we look at stars essentially, or even neutron stars, white dwarf stars, even planets as well actually, then they're in hydrostatic equilibrium in the sense that there's an outward pressure balancing out the gravitational force. Now, depending on the balance of that depends on its size. So for example, neutron stars are quite massive. They have a very high gravitational force trying to collapse them, so they actually can get smaller, and their internal pressure, essentially their neutron degeneracy pressure, holds them up to their certain size. They're quite small. White dwarfs are less massive, so actually they don't need quite as much pressure to work against the gravity. Anyway, with a black hole, these have ended their lives as massive stars, maybe. Again, there's different sorts of black holes. Actually, they don't have to be a stellar black hole, but this time round, they've not necessarily got that pressure to support them. So they kind of collapse to what we might refer to as like a singularity. And then we have other things they're associated with. So they're not necessarily what we would classify more traditionally as in hydrostatic equilibrium. So one of the key features really of a black hole is the event horizon. So this is a region around the black hole where even light can't escape. So once you get to a certain distance towards it, then essentially the escape velocity is pretty much what the speed of light is, and that's known as the event horizon. It's symmetric all the way around, but that is for a non-rotating Schwarzschild black hole. So if we've got a non-rotating black hole, then the event horizon is kind of symmetric all the way around. And yeah, that's pretty much it really. But if we're being honest, non-rotating black holes, are they really going to exist in the real world, knowing how things like stars form, how a neutron star forms from a star, and also possibly how black holes form? So it's easy to understand a non-rotating black hole, but whether they actually exist in the real world is obviously open to debate, and it's probably unlikely. But a Schwarzschild black hole is easy to understand. They have no spin. They have spherical symmetry, so they're symmetric on kind of all axes. And the event horizon is going to scale with the mass. If you increase the mass, then the event horizon gets bigger. Kind of makes sense, really. Got more mass there, so therefore you can't get quite as close before you kind of reach that limit, really. Now, the one we're really interested in for this particular video is a rotating black hole. So this is a Kerr black hole, and these differ from a Schwarzschild black hole because they have some rotation. Now, you do get other types of black hole, and maybe I'll make a separate video on all of those where you could have a charged black hole as well and other things. But the two key ones for this are going to be a Schwarzschild and your Kerr black hole. So now we've got a rotating black hole. So the key difference here is that it has some spin, it's rotating, and again, it can have an upper limit and like a lower limit, so it's in some range. It doesn't have to be a set angular momentum essentially, or rotational energy. It's not now going to have spherical symmetry with regards to things like the event horizons and that. It now also has two event horizons. It doesn't have that single one, it's actually got two now. And it also has an ergosphere. There are also things like photon spheres, or not necessarily spheres, but you've got additional things occurring with a rotating black hole as well, which I'm not really going to cover here. So your inner and outer event horizons, they kind of act in a similar way to what they would do with the Schwarzschild, but again, maybe a separate video. But in between the two, you have some really weird things that can kind of occur, like time loops and stuff like that. So you've got the inner one and you've got your outer one. Now, the spin determines the separation between the two. If you have a faster rotating black hole, then the distance between the inner and outer increases. As you slow the rotation down, they get closer and closer. And actually, if there's no spin, then the inner and outer are going to be the same, which is what we have for a Schwarzschild black hole, which is why we only have the one event horizon. Now, beyond that is the bit we're really interested in for this particular video, and the Penrose process, and that's the ergosphere, and that sits outside of the inner and outer horizons, and it's kind of like an oblate or pumpkin shaped, and again it's kind of determined a little bit by the spin. A faster spinning black hole is going to have a slightly different shaped ergosphere than a non-rotating one. In fact, a non-rotating one, it goes back down to being symmetric essentially, but it doesn't have this kind of ergosphere because it's not rotating. So what is this particular region outside of the two event horizons? Well, it's a region where space-time is dragged around the black hole. So the black hole is rotating, and actually you're close enough now that the actual space-time around it is being dragged and twisted. And again, as we mentioned before, the shape of this region is kind of oblate, pumpkin sort of shaped, and it comes in at the poles. So if you've got the rotation axis, then the poles of that rotation axis is kind of where the ergosphere comes in and kind of touches, not necessarily touches it, but it comes in there, and it's obviously wider along the equator really of the rotation. And again, as it spins faster, that shape's going to change. So inside that region then, as we mentioned, the space-time is dragged around by the black hole's rotation. So if we actually put a particle in there, or anything in there, then it's going to get dragged around by this frame dragging essentially, the dragging of this space-time. So it could be anything, it could be a particle, a spaceship, anything there. If you're static in space, then to an outside observer, you're going to look like you're moving and twisting around the black hole, when in reality, it's actually the space-time that you're in that's doing that. So a distant observer sees you moving with this kind of frame dragging. So the Penrose process then. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a single particle, and it comes into the ergosphere around the black hole. We then split it into two particles. So now we went from one particle to two particles inside the ergosphere. Now one of those particles is then going to fall into the black hole. So it goes inwards. And then the second particle actually escapes the ergosphere now. So we've got one going into the black hole and one escaping the ergosphere. So what happens here is the escaping particle is actually going to gain energy from the black hole. So it's actually extracted rotational energy from the ergosphere, and it's now left with additional energy than what it had beforehand. The particle that was going into the black hole can technically have negative energy from a distant observer as we observe it. So why is that? Well, for example, if that particle is moving against the spin to a distant observer, it looks like it's going to have negative energy. So when that then falls into the black hole, it's going to reduce the black hole's energy. So if we reduce the energy of the black hole and we want to conserve energy, then the particle that's escaping has to receive additional energy, has to actually increase its energy. So one particle reduces the energy of the black hole and the other one is gaining it. Now what happens here is it actually will spin down the black hole. So there's only a finite amount of energy you can take out of a rotating black hole. I'm not going to put the equation up here, but you can calculate what that energy would be. Obviously, the faster it's rotating, the bigger it is, there's more energy to be extracted, but there's only a finite amount that you can actually do before you kind of remove all of that energy. So thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed the videos, then do consider becoming a member of the channel. There's extra videos in the members section, but it also helps support the channel. So thank you for watching.